What is up, everybody? It's your boy Richie Rich with Let's Get Rollin', and today we are going to be reviewing all of the Ork troops and the elite units for the ninth edition Codex. In ninth edition, the different elite choices for Orks are all infantry. There are different types of infantry. Now, troops have changed significantly since 8th edition. We're not seeing those 30-man blobs of boys anymore. We're seeing smaller squads of boys. So it is interesting because while elites are improved overall in ninth edition, due to the fact that we're not seeing that much infantry being run in the orc armies, a lot of choices seem viable and there seems to be a lot of room for experimentation. For the rating system, I'm rating out of scale of 1 to 10, 9 to 10 being units that are essential for competitive play, 7 to 8 being units that are viable in competitive play and seeing competitive play in certain archetypes, 5 to 6 seeing very limited competitive play, and so those are units that I believe have some potential, and 3 to 4 being units that are not seeing play at all and units that I believe have too low of a value to be competitive, and there are many other units that basically do a better job of what they do. Alright, so first of all, let's get into the first unit, which is the Beastsnagga Boyz. So Beastsnagga Boyz, they're like a basically a Primaris boy, if you want to call them that. They are, I believe, 2 points more than each boy is, coming in at 11 points. So 10 of them, you can get them for 110 points, and you get a knob as well. So they have essentially the same stat line, except that they have an extra point of strength. They get a 6-up invulnerable save, and they also get +1 to hit on vehicles and monsters. The thing that Beast Snaggas have access to is a lot of good stratagems. They have that stratagem where they can stop people from fleeing in combat, and they also have access to the stratagem that lets them pile in 6 inches. Beastsnagga Boyz definitely, I think, will see more play as we see more infantry baseless. Right now, they're not seeing a lot of play, but they are still seeing some fringe play, and people are still finding uses for them. They're good at being units where they can, do actions, get you those primary objectives because they have OPSEC. They can get you those secondary objectives. As well, they do have the ability to be quite a punch in melee. So they're really good at clearing other infantry that most other armies have, like Drukhari infantry and AdMech infantry, and even Space Marines. They're pretty good at dealing with Space Marines as well, point for point. So for that reason, I think the Beastsnagga Boyz is a solid 8 out of 10, and it is a viable competitive unit and really shines in certain archetypes. Next up, we got the boys. So the humble boy came back with the toughness 5 and -1 AP choppas. So most of the time, people are going to be running boys with choppas. Shooters have not seen much play at all, especially in the top competitive list. They've seen like pretty much no play, and most people are just running boys with choppas. The thing in ninth edition Codex, there's so many hits to the having such a huge blob of boys that now realistically it's better to just take units of 10 because you get a free knob, and it gives you more flexibility as ninth edition, especially in competitive play. You want to be all around the board. That way you can take advantage of things like Octarius data. You can take advantage of dealing with primaries being all over the map, and boys having OPSEC. Just like Beastsnagga Boyz, they are pretty damn strong in close combat. Actually, I think their close combat profile is just a little weaker because they have a strength 4 as opposed to 5, but if you have them running as Goths, they're still quite efficient in close combat. Another thing is the specialist that they can take, which is Trukk Boys. So Trukk Boys are insane because you can move the truck, then you can hop the boys out of the truck. Right now, most tournament organizers are reading the rules as the boys are able to disembark and then move and then charge. So that makes Trukk Boys especially powerful, given that it gives them a huge threat range. So I do believe boys are a 9 out of 10. They are not as powerful and don't play the same way in big squads anymore, but in small squads, they're still quite lethal and they pack quite a punch. Oh, the Gretchin. The Gretchin have really taken a hit in ninth edition. Now, Gretchin are essentially our light infantry choice, and they don't do anything besides basically take up space, hold objectives, and perform actions. They're like the premier action monkey, but beyond that, they're pretty damn useless. So Gretchin, first of all, are very weak. Um, yeah, they basically do nothing in combat. They're not gonna kill anything. They did go to toughness 3. This is actually an outdated data sheet. They went up to toughness 3, but now they are actually in fact save 7, and they are not looking pretty whatsoever. They've also lost the ability to get +1 to, I believe it was +1 to wound in squads of 20. And yeah, realistically, the only reason that they're 7 out of 10 is that they're just your cheapest troop choice, so you can still use them for building cheap patrols and other cheap detachment types. But realistically, Gretchen are not going to do much for you. Also, the Grot shield stratagem got nerfed because now you have to declare it essentially before your enemy starts shooting, whereas before you could declare it as soon as a unit got hit. So there's more ways to play around that. If I had to rate the Gretchen on a pure combat profile, I would literally give them a 2 out of 10 due to the fact that they do have uses in a strategic element like screening the backfields. For list building, I will give them a 7 out of 10, and they are seen still quite often in competitive play for that reason. Next up, we got the Trukk. So the Trukk saw a lot of indirect buffs with boys being able to have Trukk boys, and they did get the ability to get Ramshackle. They did get a slight increase in the points, which actually does hurt a bit, with boys also getting an increase in points from 8 points to 9 points. However, I do think the Trukk still overcomes a lot of the weaknesses that the Ork army has, especially if you're running a lot of infantry, which is that Orks are glass cannons, and the Trukks really help to prevent that because now you can just pop them in a truck and you have access to toughness 6 and essentially 10 more wounds to able to hide your boys and allow your boys to get around the map, or you could put Tankbustas in there or Burna Boyz in there and do some damage with those. Ramshackle also helps a lot as you're reducing a lot of the damage, and especially with melee units having multiple damage that are lower toughness. Sorry, not lower toughness, but lower strength. Ramshackle definitely does help the Trukk stay alive for much longer. It's seeing a lot of play. Any list that are running boys are definitely taking at least one squad of Trukk boys. So for that reason, I give the Trukk an 8 out of 10. Next up, we got Burna Boyz. So Burna Boyz saw a buff. They finally increased the range of the flamers from 8 inches to 12 inches, so now you could actually come out of deep strike and Burna Boy stuff. They are a good anti-infantry, and they can definitely deal damage because one of the problems that orcs have is with hitting stuff, but with Burnas hitting automatically, that does help a lot. One drawback is that you do have to take a single spanner with every, basically in every squad of 5, one of the Burna Boys has to be a spanner. This is an interesting change that I think people are generally not too happy about, since the spanner cannot take a Burna for some reason. It can either take a custom Mega Blaster or it can take a Shooter. And kind of funny thing with the custom Mega Blaster, if you roll a 1 on it, it basically is going to kill the spanner with it. However, we did see the Burna Boys in a list that came first running freebooters, and I do think that they're pretty good at triggering freebooters considering that all your units are hitting automatically, so you can easily clear some chaff, and especially if you put them in a truck, that could give them an extra threat range. Plus, they're still infantry, so they can perform actions and they could hold stuff like the points. Although they don't have OPSEC, if you're running freebooters, you can definitely give them OPSEC and have some tricky things like that. They also do have a stratagem that gives them, I believe, -2 AP and an extra strength on their Burnas in close combat. So overall, Burna Boyz definitely not looking like they're gonna be an auto take, but I think in some lists they will perform quite well. For that reason, I give the Burna Boyz a 7 out of 10. Next up, we got Kommandos, and oh man, Kommandos got completely gassed in this edition. They basically buffed everything that we would want with Kommandos. So Kommandos now in cover, they essentially have a 3-up save in cover, and with ninth edition having so much cover, this is a huge boost. Also, they are the only, I believe, the only unit where Power Claws only cost 5 points, where most cost 10 points, which is interesting. If you could take more than 3 squads of Commandos, I think a lot of people would just spam like units of 10 Commandos And it is also interesting to note that they put a cap of having a maximum of 15 commandos in a unit, whereas I believe before you could take up to 20. Or was it even 30? I'm not too sure, but they definitely limited the size of that. I think commandos are seeing lots of play. They're great action monkeys. They also have infiltrate, which means that you can screen away other enemy units that have infiltrate. They're actually pretty decent in combat because they have the exact same profile as a boy, but they also have throat slitters, which actually increases their damage in output more than that of the boy. They're only 1 point more than a boy, and interestingly enough, they have 6 inches of movement. So you're getting basically a better version of boys with extra point of movement, +1 to wound, 3 plus armor save and cover, and a cheaper power claw at only 1 point extra each. So commandos definitely seeing a lots of play and lots of people using them. And I think we're gonna see them used even more. Next up, we got Mad Dok Grotsnik. Now, Mad Dog Grotsnik, unfortunately, is still not very strong. I think that the regular Painboy is still the better take. Essentially, what Mad Dog Grotsnik can do is give your units a feel no pain, and he himself has a 5-up feel no pain. So he gives nearby orcs, infantry, or bikers feel no pain. I believe it is a 6-up. Yep, 6-up feel no pain, and he can also heal them 2 wounds per turn. Now, he does have this strange rule where he has to charge at things. So he has to declare a charge if it's eligible. So that makes him a little tricky to play. I mean, that does open up to the fact that he can actually fall back or advance in charge, which could be interesting. But given that his combat profile is not that great, I don't know if you want him to be charging that often. While he does have the Urti syringe, which lets him wound things on a 2 plus, it's only 1 damage, so he's not going to be doing much to a lot of stuff out there, considering that regular Marines have 2 wounds apiece now. So for that reason, I think you're better off taking the Pain Boy if you're trying to build a competitive list, and for that reason, I would give him a 4 out of 10. Next up, we got Meganobz, and Meganobz have the advantage of now having a little bit more movement speed, and they are also slightly cheaper than they were before. So there are version of Terminators, the Meganobz, and they are quite killy when you get them in combat, especially if you're running them with the 2 kill saw loadout. Now, they are hitting on 4s when you do that, but if you have them around the war boss, then that could be a good time because now they're hitting on 3s. The 2 plus save does really help a lot. You really have to put in a lot of firepower to take out a squad of Meganobz. And although they're not, let's say, durable as maybe some Death Shroud Terminators, because they are missing an invulnerable save, nonetheless, they are pretty durable and they can help you deal with some of the tougher units with the fact that they all have access to power claws and kill saws. And hitting things on a 10 strength is definitely nothing to scoff at, especially at 2 damage apiece. With kill saws, you also get D3 damage. So we do see a lot of lists playing around with Meganobz, and I personally think that they have a lot of potential. So for that reason, I gave them an 8 out of. Next up, we got the mech. So the mech is interesting because what a lot of people do with the mech in Blood Axe lists is that they just take a mech and they give it Morg's Finken Cap and they give it the Warlord trait where you can redeploy 3 units in the deployment phase. So he is a great choice for that because now you can save up your Warlord traits and your relics for your primary killy characters like your war bosses or your uh, beast boss on the Squigosaur. Outside of doing that though, in the Blood Axe culture, he's not seeing any play to be honest. So if he didn't have access to that, I would give him a 4, probably a 4 or 5 out of 10. He is pretty weak on all of his profiles. The custom Mega Slugger is actually decent because it's a D6, D3 pistol, but the range is quite low and his mechanic ability is actually very, very weak, regaining only 1 wound per turn. In Blood Axe units, he's almost become a must take, allowing you to farm CP, but other than that, I think the use of him is a little too limited. So for that reason, in a Blood Axe unit, I would say he's a 7 out of 10, 7 to 8. Outside of a Blood Axe culture, he's probably a 4 to 5. So Knobwood Waaagh banner. Nob with Waaagh banner, I think, suffers from the fact that he overlaps with the regular War Boss aura that already gives you the +1 to hit. There's not many times you're gonna have to go past the +1 to hit. Maybe if you're running some Meganobz or if you're running a lot of things with Power Claws. But in general, I feel like the Nob with Waaagh banner is just a little too expensive for what he does at 70 points. And the fact that we're not seeing huge blobs of boys anymore, I think also diminishes his role in the game. It's a little harder for you to put your Nob with Waaagh banner around three squads of 10 boys as opposed to putting him around one squad of 30 boys. It is interesting because you can give him warlord traits and you can also give him relics. So maybe we'll see some combination of those that make him a bit more competitive. Maybe the meta will shift and someone will figure out how to run large blob of boys. But I think for right now, he's a 4 out of 10. There's just better options. I think overall, just slapping on, spending a couple more points and getting another squad of boys is worth a bit more than the Nob with Waaagh banner. So now we're on to the Nob. People have been theory crafting them with giving them two choppas because the Nobz are one of the units that can actually take two choppas. So that gives them 5 attacks apiece. It's 5 attacks at strength 5 and -1 AP, 1 damage piece. But I still think that Nobz are not strong enough to see lots of competitive play. For the same price of having a 10-man squad of Nobz, you can just have two squads of regular boys. And I think that's actually a little bit more attacks and a little more versatility than having just a squad of Nobz. They do have an additional wound, but a lot of things are 2 damage now, so I don't think that the additional wound is going to be that much relevant. Yeah, they do have a 4 plus save, so I mean, if you look at it from a pure stat perspective, then I think Nobz are superior to the regular boys, but I think in actual gameplay wise and practice, Nobz are still a little too weak to be seeing much competitive play, especially in the types of archetypes that people are running. I'll definitely have to do some math hammer on exactly what you're getting for Nobz point wise, but at 18 points a model, I think it's just a little too expensive. Maybe if it was around 15 points, then people may evaluate them in a better way, and Nobz would see some more competitive play. But I think at their current state, they're a 5 out of 10, and there's just some better choices as opposed to taking Nobz. Next up, we got the Painboy. So the Painboy is the classic support character, but we're not seeing it much in ninth edition just due to the fact that the style of play with having a lot of extra boys is not very popular right now. However, I do think that the Painboy can be seen more with maybe a boss on a Squigosaur, because that thing is very durable, and giving that thing 2 wounds a turn could actually be quite a game changer actually, because that could make that could be the difference from that unit lasting an extra turn or two, and especially with the damage output that a beast boss on Squigosaur can put out, it can be very, very hard times for the opponent to deal with. Now again, similar to the Nob with the Waaagh banner, the fact that the Painboy can't be used in 30-man blobs is a big detriment. It's that fact that so many things are affecting the ability to take 30-man blobs that the Painboy is probably going to see not much play as it did in 8th edition Orks Codex. But at the same time, it does have potential. So for that reason, I would give the Painboy a 6 out of 10. I think we will see some play out of it in competitive lists. Next up is Tankbustas. Tankbustas are actually not that bad point wise, and I would actually give this more of a 7 out of. I would say this is more of a 7 to 8, depending on what type of culture you put the Tankbustas in. I just put them at a 6 because I do think they're a little weaker than the Burna Boyz and some of the other options, but they are definitely not a bad option, and I see that they have quite a lot of potential because although their rocket launcher did move to heavy, now it's a heavy D3, so it gives you a lot more shots. And the tank hammer is also interesting because now the tank hammer gives you a way to deal mortal wounds, so you can deal up to D6 mortal wounds. Although that model is destroyed, if you have like maybe 2 tank hammers, that could be enough to wipe out a whole character. So I think tank busters are just a little bit pricey, given that heavy makes them pretty unreliable. You're gonna have to essentially be with tank buses, you're gonna have to reposition them, and getting that -1 to hit where you're hitting on a 6+ is very detrimental. I mean, you're halving the amount of hits that you're gonna get, and Orc Fire is already unreliable. Hitting on sixes is not a good time at all. So for that reason, I would say this is a 6 out of 10. We are seeing this in some competitive lists, but I'm not sure if it will be a staple. And that is it, everybody. Thanks for watching the video. Hopefully this was useful to you guys. In the next series, we're going to continue covering all of the other choices for the Ork 9th Edition Codex. I appreciate all your subs, your likes, and your comments. As always, guys, keep those dice rolling, and you guys have a great day out there.